Before turning 35, Helen was left alone by her beloved husband Ben, who left her for a young and playful paramedic, Trudy. Trudy had come to their village after finishing medical school and had her eye on a married man with 2 children. Ben was tall, handsome, and worked as a veterinarian on a farm, so they became close on the subject of curing people and animals. When Ben said he was leaving, Helen fell to his feet, begging him not to go. How could she live without him? They had 2 children together, Peter, who was 5 years old, and Susan, who was 3. But Ben kept saying the same thing. He wouldn't abandon their children, he would help, but his true love was Trudy, and he left with just 1 suitcase. Then they moved to a neighbouring district with his new wife. Helen cried and cried, but then she pulled herself together. It wasn't right for her children to see their mother always crying, and although she loved him more than life itself, she was able to strangle that love in her heart. She worked, took care of the children, and became both their father and mother. Ben had promised a lot, but he only kept his promises in words. In the 10 years since he left his family, he never once visited his son or daughter, only sent small alimony. He didn't even send birthday cards to the children, even though he lived only 100 kilometers away from the village where his former family lived. The children cried for their dad at first, but then they got used to it, and Helen got used to being without male support. She worked in the farm canteen during the planting and harvesting seasons, and in the farm in the winter. She did everything to ensure that her children lacked nothing. She didn't look at men anymore. Now she saw them as a source of pain and betrayal. Helen became like a robot. Work, home, children, and that was it. No personal life, no joy. Although she had joy, admiring how her children grew up and how well they studied, it was the most important thing in her life. But sometimes at night, Helen would cry over her ruined woman life. No one would hug her, cuddle her. But in the morning the tears were forgotten, and she used to rush to work again, then to her children. She cooked, washed, sewed, even helped them with their studies. She was always good at math, but she couldn't turn that skill into a profession. Her parents were poor. They couldn't afford to teach her, and then she got married. In general, things turned out the way they did. And then terrible news came. Helen learned that Ben and Trudy had died. They were hit by a train at a railway crossing while driving a service car. Helen cried with her children. Even though they hadn't seen for a long time, she felt sorry for Ben. And Trudy, even though she was a homewrecker, she certainly didn't deserve such a horrible fate. Helen even decided to go to the funeral. But then she found out that Trudy's elderly parents were going to bury Ben and their daughter in the city where they lived. And Helen also learned that Ben and Trudy had a daughter left behind. She was 10 years old at the time. Trudy's parents couldn't take her in. They were both sick, barely able to walk, and other relatives apparently refused to be involved. Ben's sister, who had approved of her brother when he had left Helen, immediately declared that she had 4 of her own children to feed and wouldn't be able to take in her niece. In short, after the funeral, they planned to take Amanda to an orphanage. Upon learning of this, Helen became pensive and distracted. She cooked in the canteen, and because of this thoughtfulness, she either poured more salt than necessary or even sugared the potatoes once. The director scolded her at first, but then realized that something was troubling her. She asked, and Helen spilled everything. "I can't get Amanda out of my head. I understand that she's a stranger to me, but she's Ben's daughter, and I loved him. Yes, I forced myself to forget, or at least I thought I did, but my heart still aches when I remember him, and when I think about what he had to endure in his last moments, I feel sorry for him to tears, and there's no anger. And now this little girl. Can you imagine losing both parents at once? And her relatives don't want her. Helen, what are you thinking? Scolded the director. Don't be foolish. What do you need this girl for? You have to raise your own children. Peter will finish school in a couple of years, and then he'll need to study further, and Susan is growing up too. I understand all that. But I feel sorry for the girl, Helen answered, lowering her head. And then she made a decision. She went to the neighbouring district, found out everything and saw Amanda. Her grandparents were still watching over her. The old people were crying because they couldn't take the girl with them to the city. They could barely walk. It's a good thing that kind people helped with their daughters' and son-in-law's funerals, but they couldn't afford to take care of their granddaughter. When they found out who Helen was, they were confused. Why did she want this? But Helen simply said, Amanda is my children's sister. How can I abandon her? Trudy's parents were amazed, and then they thanked the woman warmly for saving their granddaughter from an orphanage. Amanda turned out to be a sweet girl, well-mannered and quiet. She cried a lot about her dead parents. Helen comforted her as best she could and promised her that everything would be fine. She would get to know her brother and sister, and the pain would fade away. And Amanda trustingly hugged the woman. No, Helen didn't try to become her mother. She was just a good friend to the lonely girl. But her 15-year-old son, Peter, and 13-year-old daughter, Susan, didn't like their little sister. They saw her only as the one who had taken their father away from them. Helen scolded them in vain when Amanda was not there. I was able to forgive the offence, and Amanda is not to blame for anything. So please, stop treating her so badly. She is your sister. But her own children were like deaf. Then they developed a new tactic. They started to pretend that Amanda didn't exist. If they sat down to eat without their mother, they didn't call Amanda to the table and shooed her away from the TV, and didn't call her by name. Susan, who shared a room with Amanda, even drew a line that she was not allowed to cross, and if she did, Susan would rough up her little sister. Amanda didn't complain to Helen. The girl thought it was still better than being in an orphanage, which she had heard so much about before. Helen saw that her own children didn't accept the girl, but she hoped that everything would be okay soon. After all, time heals and adds wisdom. But time passed and nothing changed. Peter had already finished school and gone to the city to study to be a car mechanic, and Susan had grown up and dreamed of becoming a doctor after school. Helen supported her children in their aspirations, and she didn't forget about Amanda. She tried to pay more attention to her, and her own children didn't seem to notice that their mother was torn between them and this stray, as they called Amanda, among themselves. Susan kept a watchful eye on her younger sister, ensuring she didn't take her things or cosmetics. When Helen moved Amanda into Peter's old room, Susan breathed a sigh of relief, and Amanda tried to stay out of Susan's sight. It was quieter that way. Peter seemed to be all grown up, but sometimes he acted like a wicked child. Once he came for Christmas and brought small gifts for his mother and sister, a scarf for Helen and cosmetics for Susan. Amanda was sitting at the dining table, lowering her eyes so that it wouldn't be obvious that she also would like to get a gift. Peter looked at her and smiled mysteriously. "What are you sitting there for, little one?" he chuckled. I have something for you too." And he pulled out a large chocolate bar from his suitcase. Helen couldn't afford to buy plenty of sweets for the children, and if she did, it was something simpler. But this chocolate bar was simply huge. Amanda's face lit up. She smiled and timidly took the treat. "Thank you," she whispered gratefully. "You're welcome," Peter answered jokingly and smiled again. Susan looked at her brother in bewilderment. How could he be so generous to this little pest? Has he gone crazy? "Let's eat it together with tea," Amanda exclaimed joyfully and unwrapped the chocolate bar. Looking at what was inside, her face immediately changed, tears glistening in her eyes. Helen, seeing what was in the rustling foil, paled with indignation. Peter, her adult son, decided to tease Amanda. Inside the wrapper was a neatly rolled rectangular piece of tar. "Peter, what kind of joke is this?" Helen protested. "Are you out of your mind?" "What's wrong?" her son replied, barely holding back laughter. "It's good tar. I barely got it from the boys at the construction school. Look how evenly I rolled it out. Now, Amanda doesn't need any gum. It will last her a month." And he and Susan burst out laughing and ran into her room, where Peter treated her with the chocolate bar he had brought. Amanda sat there silently in the kitchen, tears dropping onto the pseudo-chocolate. "Fools!" Helen scolded. "Just fools! Don't cry, my dear. I'll buy you another one, even better." And she did, a little later. And then in the spring, Amanda's maternal aunt, Julia, suddenly showed up. Julia was already in her 50s, had no children or husband, worked as a seamstress, and lived in the capital. She knew nothing about Amanda, but then she met some relatives who told her about Trudy's daughter. By then, Trudy's parents were no longer alive, and Julia felt sorry for the girl. How was she living with her father's ex-wife? This woman was probably teasing the orphan girl, taking out her anger on the defenseless child. Imagining this, Julia found Helen's address and visited her. And she almost immediately realized she had been wrong. Helen loved Amanda and took care of her like her own daughter. But Helen's children... So, Julia offered to take Amanda with her. At first Helen refused, and Amanda was against it too. She was used to her stepmother and even loved her. As for the way Peter and Susan behaved towards her, Amanda tried not to pay attention. But Julia persuaded both of them that it would be better for the girl to live in the capital. Better education, spacious 3-room apartment, museums, libraries, parks. Julia was alone, and the loneliness was driving her crazy. With Amanda, they would live well together. The main thing was that the girl would be safe and happy. "Please understand," Julia told Helen when Amanda left the room. "I want to help you. I understand how torn you are. You love your children and Amanda. You forgave your husband, didn't you? But your children haven't forgotten the offence, and they will take out this anger on Amanda all her life. All 3 of them are unhappy because of this." "Maybe you're right," Helen nodded thoughtfully. "I sometimes think that I'm not doing something right. I love all 3 of them, and they're like enemies to each other, even though they're related by blood. They will understand with age, both Peter and Susan, that they were wrong. And now, let's decide something, otherwise it can be not far from trouble. Amanda is entering puberty. It's unknown how she will react to the next attack of her brother and sister." "And I'm scared," Helen admitted. "And if you think about it, Peter and Susan are closer to me, of course, but I'm ashamed in front of Amanda. I promised her that I wouldn't give her to anyone, and it turns out that I lied." "You didn't lie. It just didn't quite work out. It happens, and Amanda will be fine with me. We just need to convince her to go with me. I'm attached to her very much, although she's the daughter of a woman who had broken my family." Helen sobbed, wiping away tears. The women didn't notice that Amanda was standing behind the door and heard everything. The girl understood how difficult it was for Helen to choose between her and her own children, and Amanda wisely decided not to torment her second mother anymore. After all, no matter how you look at it, her presence will always remind her of her husband's betrayal, and Peter and Susan would calm down. It's better to communicate at a distance. That same evening, Amanda said she would go with Julia. Helen cried, hugging the girl who had become dear to her over this time, and the girl cried, promising to write letters and that they would definitely see each other again. Peter and Susan finally breathed a sigh of relief that they had finally fused this stray. Years went by, and Susan left her mother long ago. She graduated, as she had dreamed, as a doctor. She and her brother lived in the city, each with their own families and jobs. They came to their mother's house for the holidays. Amanda didn't get lost either. She often wrote to Helen, even came to visit her from the capital. Julia, as promised, raised Amanda with love and care. Amanda graduated as a fashion designer. Now she had her own atelier, and she got married. She even established communication with Peter and Susan, but only at a distance. They called each other, congratulated each other on holidays. Time passed. Helen didn't notice how she aged. Now she was 80. It was hard for her alone in the village, but she was used to it, and she didn't complain. She shuffled around the house slowly but surely. And then Peter arrived. He looked thoughtful and unhappy. Helen immediately sensed that something was wrong with her son and asked him directly what was bothering him. Peter admitted that he had some problems. Recently, Tom, Peter's son, got married, and they all lived together in Peter's 2-room apartment. The young couple needs their own space, you understand, Mum, especially since Julia, Tom's wife, is pregnant. I don't know how we can all continue to live together. My wife is nervous. Tom takes any job he can get, and I never leave the auto repair shop. But we still don't have enough money for a down payment to take out a mortgage. Peter paused for a moment and continued, Mum, I was thinking, maybe we could sell your house? But where will I live, my son? The elderly woman asked, confused. Oh, Mum, we won't abandon you, Peter exclaimed. We'll take you with us. You'll stay in Tom's room. They will move to their place after getting a mortgage. Oh, I don't know, son. Helen shook her head. I'm afraid to leave my own home. And what will Susan say? She'll be upset that she didn't inherit anything from her mother's home. Why should Susan be upset? Peter shrugged. She has an apartment with her husband, a car, a country house. They have good salaries. They've already bought an apartment for their daughter. And not with a mortgage. Susan is living the good life, while I've been working hard my whole life. What's the point of helping her? Helen felt so sorry for her firstborn, and she decided to help. What else did she have left? She would live with her son until the end, and they wouldn't hurt her. They were all family. The house was sold quickly, and Helen was moved to the city. Her daughter-in-law, Rosanna, seemed to welcome her warmly. Live and be happy, Mum, she cried. No need to light a fireplace to warm up the house or shovel snow. See how good everything is. At first Helen was pleased. She had settled in comfortably and had helped her grandson. He took out a mortgage and bought an apartment in just 2 days, and he and his wife moved. Great. Susan, however, was a little upset that such a decision had been made about her mother without her. Since you've decided that way, she told her mother angrily, then live with them. But if Rosanna drives you out, don't even think about coming to me. I don't have a place for you. I'm telling you right now." "Why would she drive me out, dear daughter?" Helen smiled. "I helped them. I'm sorry you didn't get anything from me. Is that why you're upset?" "Oh my God, I don't need your money." Susan rolled her eyes. "You just don't know your daughter-in-law well. But remember that I won't be able to take you in. If anything happens, you'll go to a nursing home," said Susan. And as if she hit her mother with these words, Helen shuddered. She didn't deserve to hear that. A month passed, 2, 6 months, and it turned out Susan was right. Rosanna began to change before her eyes. She reproached her mother-in-law for shuffling loudly, dropping crumbs when she ate, and watching soap operas. She was angry that an elderly woman became disorderly and sometimes broke the dishes, and that she had to help her in the bathroom. The daughter-in-law would scold and insult her mother-in-law, calling her smelly and sloppy. The son never stopped his wife, only averting his eyes. And then Helen would cry in her room from the hurt. She had helped her children, but they forgot her kindness. Neither her son nor daughter-in-law asked for forgiveness. And soon Peter suggested, "Mum, how about a nursing home? Everyone would be happier that way. It's nice there. They provide food and care, and you'll have company. Maybe you'll even get remarried. There are men there, too." Helen's heart sank with bitterness. "What men?" she asked her son. "I never thought about that when I was young. I was too busy raising you and your sister. Why do I need all this now?" Look at her, she's still arguing. The daughter-in-law, who was also present at the conversation, exclaimed, "Nobody's really asking you anyway. Let's just pack her things and take her there. I'm so tired of all this. I can't take it anymore." Helen didn't say anything. She just cried. Her son and Rosanna left her without even acknowledging her tears. They started looking for a nursing home, and Susan was tasked with it too. She stormed over to her brother's house one Sunday. Helen was in her room and didn't come out, but she heard everything. "When you took in our mother, you should have thought ahead," Susan yelled. "You wanted the apartment for your son. You have to live within your means. I told you and Mother that I wouldn't take her in. I have a job. I need to relax at home, and Andrew won't agree. You know he's a talented surgeon. He needs to be at peace at home." "I've checked 2 nursing homes," the brother replied apologetically, "but we can't get into the state-run ones. We can go to a private nursing home." "A private one?" Susan exclaimed. "Have you seen the prices there? Mother's pension isn't enough. Are you going to pay, or should I? I have my own expenses. My daughter is studying abroad." "What are we supposed to do then?" The brother shrugged. "I have an idea," Susan said, lowering her voice. Helen didn't hear what they talked about, nor did she want to. The tears were choking her. She found herself unwanted in her old age. That's what she had raised her children for. Susan, her brother, and Rosanna whispered to each other, made an agreement, and left on a good note. Her daughter never came to say goodbye. The next day, Peter told his mother to get ready. "For the nursing home?" asked the elderly woman, her voice trembling. "Yes," Peter replied, dropping his eyes. There was nothing to do. The elderly woman gathered her humble belongings. Her son took her out of the house, put her in Susan's car, and the 3 of them drove somewhere. Helen no longer cried. She had resigned herself, and maybe it would be better there, in the nursing home, more peaceful, and she did not have much time left. Helen even fell asleep in the car. and when she opened her eyes, she was horrified. They had arrived at the cemetery. "Son, daughter, where have you brought me?" cried the mother. "I'm still alive." "Mum, live as long as you want," Susan replied indignantly, not even turning around from the wheel. "We found you a good home. Here, in the cemetery. It's a guardhouse. You can even live there in the winter. And there's a stove and all the amenities." "What kind of amenities can there be here?" Helen objected, wiping away her tears. "Oh, Mum, don't be capricious," her son replied from the front passenger seat. "You've lived like this in the village all your life, and you can do it here too. And besides, you'll have an assistant, the cemetery guard. He lives right there. A good elderly man. He agreed to look after you for a small fee," her daughter continued. "And also, Mum, don't be offended, but I'll keep your pension card. I'll use it to pay the guard and bring you food." Hearing all this, Helen trembled. Her own children were going to throw her away like garbage. At that moment, the guard approached the car. He turned out to be a shabby-looking man, clearly fond of hitting the bottle. "Well, where's the old lady?" he croaked, peering into the car. "Ah, there she is. Well, hello, Granny. Let's go get acquainted." And he laughed so hard that all three in the car shuddered. But nevertheless, the son and daughter pulled their mother out of the car and let her go to the guardhouse. The elderly woman was so horrified that she couldn't feel her legs. Suddenly, someone called out to them at the gate. They turned around and saw a slim, pretty and stylishly dressed woman in her 40s. "Helen, is that you?" the woman exclaimed in surprise. "Peter, Susan, what's going on here?" "Amanda!" exclaimed Helen. "What are you doing here?" "I came to visit my parents' graves, and then I was going to visit you in the village. What's all this about?" "It's none of your business," Susan screamed and tried to pull her mother away. But somehow Helen broke free from her daughter and son's tight grip, ran up to Amanda and told her what was happening here. "Did you bring our mother here to live?" Amanda whispered in horror, looking at Peter and Susan. "To a cemetery, to an unknown man. Who are you after that?" "She's our mother, and it's our right to decide where she lives," Peter replied arrogantly. "And you, stray, don't tell us how to live." "And I won't," Amanda replied shortly and waved to someone in an expensive car. The driver, a tall, stout guy, got out of the car, and as soon as Susan and Peter saw him, they immediately backed away, and the guard ran back to his booth. Amanda hugged Helen and led her to the car. "You're coming with me, Helen," Amanda said firmly. "You'll live with me. By the way, meet my son Philip, your grandson." The guy smiled friendlily. "Amanda, what? Why do you need me?" Helen repeated, confused. "After all, I couldn't give you everything you needed in your time." "You gave me the most important thing, your love," Amanda cried. "When no one needed me, you saved me, and I won't abandon you. As for Peter and Susan, God will judge them for everything. And don't ever blame yourself for giving me to Aunt Julia. She gave me love and care, but you gave me the most important thing, an understanding that it's essential to know how to forgive." "My dear girl," Helen cried, and those were tears of joy.